Hey there, this is the Small Fish, Big Podcast, a show for the gallus few who dream and do. If you're a small biz owner, a creative freelancer, or someone dreaming about leaving your 9-to-5, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll chat with an inspiring guest who will share their entrepreneurship story before we delve into a discussion about running a creative business. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Small Fish, Big Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sophia Sunwoo, entrepreneur and founder of Ascent Strategy, where she helps women-led startups get their companies off the ground. Sophia is also a Forbes 30 Under 30 honouree and has been recognised for her entrepreneurial endeavours in Forbes, Elle, and on the TEDx stage. That is a lot of accomplishment, Sophia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on.
Sophia, could you start by telling us a little bit about your business? Tell us about Ascent Strategy and what you do.
Yeah, so my business Ascent Strategy, I created it after having built businesses for over a decade, and I really wanted to create a business that would help entrepreneurs, specifically female entrepreneurs, build businesses the right way and kind of skip all of the mishaps, mistakes I've made over my career and just really provide a platform where I can distill that knowledge and allow people all of these bumps and mistakes that I had made throughout my career. So, and I think that, there's a lot of information out there as far as building businesses, but a lot of it is not great information. So a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with information overload, but not really having access to those juicy tidbits that actually help you make sales and convert marketing approaches into actual cash. So I really wanted to create a business like Ascent where I empowered female entrepreneurs to access not only information, but information that actually makes you money. So, through Ascent Strategy, all of my programs, coaching, products, they're all kind of centered around this concept of how do you actually make your dream a reality so that you can actually support yourself financially, live the life that you want. I'm a huge believer that you shouldn't be working 24/7 in order to build a business that you love. So for me, that's kind of a big mission is empowering female entrepreneurs to build businesses that can support them financially, but also allow them to live the life that they love.
That sounds amazing. And I think what you said at the start there is so true. There's so much information out there, but it's really hard to weed out the little tidbits of great information through all of the kind of very general, general guidance that's out there. So that all sounds really good. Can you walk us through your journey to get where you are today? Tell us about those first businesses and how that led you to where you are.
Definitely. So my first business was kind of an accident. My college roommate and I, we loved going to punk rock concerts. We were both 19 at the time. And if you've ever been to any kind of rock concert, it's very male dominated, where all the clothing and band t-shirts look great on men, but not on women. So we wanted to create a clothing company that basically was clothing that you could wear to your favorite shows, but you can still look good and wear clothes that fit you. So, my co-founder and I guess we hit a nerve because it just got super successful right away. And, we didn't know what we were doing. We were both 19. So we were really lucky, and we ended up having the clothing in 250 retailers worldwide. Miley Cyrus wore our hoodie in People magazine, and that kind of blew things out of the water. So that was like an accidental, amazing experience for us. And we ended up selling that company after about 2 or 3 years. That was my first business. So I learned a ton from that experience. And then after running that business, I realized that I didn't really want to stick in manufacturing, because when you're in clothing, you're kind of in the manufacturing industry. And I really wanted to explore more, how can we use business to address these huge social issues around the world? So my friend Josh, he had been in water since he was 15 years old. He had traveled to Kenya, Southeast Asia, working all these water projects. And I was the business person that brought like my ability to build businesses from the ground up. So we started a organization together that if you've ever donated to a water charity where, they are installing a well or something like that to give clean water to people, 30% of those actually break down after 2 to 5 years. Sometimes the percentage is higher depending on which country you go to. So our organization actually fixed those water projects. Or, if we were starting a new project, we just created like a system to make sure that the community actually had a maintenance plan after that system was installed. So that was working in the nonprofit space was definitely incredibly challenging, and it was such an interesting experience to kind of see the flip side of the for-profit world. But yeah, did that about for like 6 or 7 years. We functioned out of West Africa and India. Definitely learned a lot, but realized that I just wasn't cut out for the work. I think that nonprofit work is really for people who are just like warriors. Like I think nonprofit work is very emotionally, mentally challenging, and you really have to have the ability to balance all those multiple aspects of yourself. And for me, it was just too much. But yeah, that's kind of been my journey. And, through both of those startups, I've just learned so much, not only from like the aspect of building a business, but also like the mental and emotional resilience that you need to have as a human being in order to actually build those businesses and keep them going and stick with it.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think the nonprofit work must have been incredible. I did a bit of work for nonprofits as well when I first finished school. And I completely agree with you about the emotional impact of it. And I think I didn't anticipate that. And I didn't realize how draining that would be and how hard it is to separate that work from your personal life when it's something that you're really passionate about. So I think that's true. A lot of people either burn out after a little while, or they just find it's having too much of an impact on their mental health. And I totally agree. Those who stay in it are absolute warriors, because it's not an easy gig.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I have a lot of respect for my friends who are still in the nonprofit space and have been in the space for decades. It's just like, wow, it's really admirable.
Oh, definitely. So at that point, when you decided you were kind of ready to leave the nonprofit world and try something new, is that the time when Ascent Strategy was born?
Yeah, so that was the time where it's funny, like with Ascent, there were definitely a lot of false starts. I think that one big challenge for me was my first 2 businesses were always founded with co-founders. So I had this mental block of, I don't know if I can, and what does that look like? So there was definitely like I think that with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's not so much the business aspects that stop them from elevating. It's actually like the mental aspects, because I feel like being in entrepreneurship is such a vulnerable activity where you're revealing this passion that you have about whatever cause or product or service that you're selling, and to put everything out on the line for everyone to see is really, really challenging, I feel. So with Ascent, it was definitely like a huge challenge for me to come to grips with that and confront myself with this aspect of building a business by myself. So yeah, so this business has, it's been a huge blessing, because it's because of this aspect of confronting my fears as far as like doing something on my own. It actually allowed me to kind of reflect on my whole entrepreneurial experience and really think through how can I take my lessons learned and apply them and use it to help other entrepreneurs that I'm about to serve in this current business.
That's great. So do you work with, I know you focus on female-led, women-led businesses. Do you focus in certain industries, or are you kind of working with people across the board? Is there anything that you sort of specialize in?
Yeah, so it's mostly female entrepreneurs who are kind of under that they're going from side hustle to full time, right? So that's a very unique challenge where these are people that aren't funded by outside funding. They're using their own savings. So they really need bang for their buck when it comes to investing in themselves. As far as industries go, like the industries that I tend to serve, it's a mix of health and wellness, artisans, people who make handmade crafts, jewelry, clothing, things like that. A lot of brands in the sustainable space, just because I've been in social impact for so long. I have like a very deep understanding of how to deliver social impact in an intelligent way when it comes to business. So yeah, those are kind of like my focus areas. But honestly, I think for me, like the biggest thing I look for when I'm working with someone is, do they have a strong desire to make this passion they have full time? And are they really trying to build a business that's like coming from a place of impact and passion rather than money? Because I think that entrepreneurs who are driven by money first are definitely like a different type of entrepreneur, which totally fine. It's just really not for me, because I tend to struggle with helping the entrepreneur find a brand voice if I can't find that thread of passion, right? So yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And it kind of ties back into what you said earlier about creating that life that you want. So yes, it's great to make money, and we all need to live money to have the life that we want, but we also want to have time to enjoy our lives. And I think probably for most people, where they're kind of very one track mind towards the financial aspect of it, it's they're maybe not as keen to kind of have a well-rounded life, or to have that extra time to just enjoy what they've created.
Totally, 100%. And yeah, and I think that a lot of those entrepreneurs that are money focused, they actually end up finding after a couple years of doing it that A, they're burnt out, and B, their work doesn't feel as fulfilling anymore. I think it's just like a human nature thing too. Like if you don't assign purpose to the things that are important to your life, you just burn out and you become very disinterested in it. So I think it's something that all entrepreneurs, no matter what journey they're on, they eventually come to that realization.
And do you find, so if you are working with a lot of people that are sort of going from side hustle to full time, do you work with them throughout that sort of launch process and then continue as they grow their business?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I built my programs to kind of be sensitive to that, where, for example, one of my programs, Summit, I'll actually kind of put the entrepreneur through like a course of mine. And, in addition to that, we'll kind of work on their business one-on-one and customize it according to the course learnings. And then once that's done, I actually set aside time so that we actually connect again when they're in implementation stage. Because in my experience, theory is so different from implementation. You can theorize all you want, but when it comes down to actually implementing what you have in your head, it actually turns out very different in the real world. So that fine tuning after the fact is just so important in order to bring an idea to life. And and I work with a lot of clients actually where, they're kind of post education phase where they've learned all the knowledge they need to learn. And now it's just like fine tuning and implementation. Execution is its own monster. So we spend a significant amount of time on that for sure.
That's really good, because I think you're right. Sometimes you have this idea in your head of what your business is going to look like. And then as you put it out there and as you kind of learn, you learn as you go. And a lot of times things sort of go in a different direction, or your focus changes slightly, or everything. It's kind of like this constant shift as you figure out exactly what your niche market is and your target clients are. And so it must be so helpful to have someone like yourself to guide you along, because I think it can be pretty tough to navigate that. And it's so personal when it's your business, especially with anything creative, and having somebody who can be an objective voice is a huge asset.
Yeah, I think that subjective bias is so real. Like I for example, even though I work with entrepreneurs on their branding and marketing for a living, I can't do it on myself. I always have to hire someone else to do it for me. So that bias is so real. And, thank goodness for that, because I do think that like when you're able to collaborate with an outside person on your brand, you just create something much better than you would have come up with by yourself.
No, I think you're right. And I think that could be